But before we start, we get sort of cracking with this webinar, we'd quite like to run a poll, and this poll is really to help us get an impact of whether these webinars are actually making an impact. So we'll be running this now, hopefully, and we will also be running it towards the end of the webinar. So the question is, what is your level of knowledge about diet and your immune system? Would you say you're very knowledgeable, not sure, not knowledgeable, or not knowledgeable at all? So if you could just register your votes now, that would be greatly appreciated. Right, let's have a look. Okay. Right, I can't seem to see the results of that, but I think what we'll do is if you've posted your votes, that's great, and what we'll do is we'll look at that before the pre and the post webinar session. So Catherine, first of all, I think to give us a way of background and to give us some insight, what do we actually mean by the immune system? Because often it gets portrayed as just being a thing, you know, it's the immune system, but what does it do? And can you sort of explain a little bit more about it?
Okay, well, the immune system is made up of various components. A lot of people have heard of white blood cells, which fight infection, but it's also part of the lymphatic system, which is greatly influenced by the gut function. It helps protect us against incoming pathogens, things which would actually harm our health, like viruses and bacteria. It helps take out substances which could harm our health, which we might either ingest or breathe in, or that might be produced as part of our metabolic processes. And also the immune function has a very important role to play in detecting abnormal cells. So, for example, quite often we produce many cancer cells during the day, and our immune system will highlight that that cell is not quite right, and it will marshal defenses to get rid of it. So the immune system is like a really quietly ticking function in the background that we don't tend to think very much about unless we start getting colds, or there's something like coronavirus around now when we're thinking more about the immune system. But without a really finely balanced immune system, evenly balanced between defending our body but not mounting too big a reaction, we manage to just live our life normally. And you know, for people with asthma or with autoimmune diseases, obviously their immune system may be altered, but for the majority of people, we don't even think about it from day to day, and that shows what a good job it's doing.
So there's many organs involved, there's many cells involved, it's quite a complex system. It's not just one thing. And I think, you know, we have a sort of barrier, so that's the first part of the immune system, and then we've got a detection system to be able to detect any of those kind of, like you say, those abnormal cells. We've got then how that fights, and then how our bodies remember it from, so if we get some sort of immunity. So it's not just one thing, it's a whole complex system. And in terms of diet then, what role does diet have to play in this complex system?
Well, when we're looking at diet, we're looking at two aspects really. One, the innate system, which is the really rapid response first responders to any infection or any problem with our body. And then we're also looking at our background sort of long-term immunity. So slightly slower to kick in, but got a really good memory in terms of helping protect us against the same viruses and things coming back the following year. So we remember things, and different organs have that effect. So we've got the gut and how the digestive system works, the food that we put through it, our microbiome, which is really a posh name really for our skin bacteria, any bacteria that occur naturally in our gut, that helps set up little colonies and sort of environments that make it very hard for pathogens to get through. And then we've got various defense mechanisms in the bloodstream. We have our spleen, which will take out cells we don't want. We've got the liver and the kidneys that will try and destroy substances we don't want, and of course our kidneys will try and get rid of them for us. So it's a very finely honed system, and of course, when people are looking at diet now, there isn't really one diet or one nutrient that we can really recommend to say that actually this will boost your immune system. In fact, we don't really want to boost our immune system. We want to make sure it's running perfectly in the background. And from a dietary point of view, we're probably looking more at the Mediterranean style of eating, whether you want Mediterranean diet, the blue zones, Nordic diet, or any healthy eating guidelines from any country around the world. They're all very consistent. A plant-based diet with plenty of fruit and vegetables, whole grains, modest meat or dairy products or other protein sources, which are very important as well, enough fibre, either as like this sort of prebiotic soluble fibre that helps maintain our gut bacteria and cultures and help protect us, or the roughage fibre, which helps things keep going through. And that sounds very mundane, but actually that's all it's about. And if you're eating a varied diet, you're going to get plenty of the nutrients, which actually will help your body mount a perfect immune defence.
So if we are sort of relatively well and we're healthy, following that type of diet is giving our immune system the best possible chance, the best possible outcome. So when we hear about things like the superfoods, you know, on this, if you eat blueberries, for example, you know, or you eat certain particular, is there any evidence to say that having one of those foods, an individual food, is going to make any impact on your immune system?
Okay, well, superfoods are just foods with good PR, really. There isn't such a thing as a superfood, but obviously marketeers would have you believe otherwise. And quite often when you're looking at a particular food, say a blueberry, what you're doing is looking at what is in a blueberry that you can extract from the actual fruit and find what's inside and whether that has any potential effect on cultures of cells in a test tube in a laboratory. And what we know is that a lot of fruit and vegetables have a naturally very high antioxidant activity. So the substances that they contain, not just vitamins and minerals, but the colours and flavours are also important here. They, in a test tube, can actually generate a very high antioxidant potential. That is something that theoretically would actually protect your cells against damage. But the biggest problem we've got is that we have to eat those foods first, and when we eat them, our bodies are very selective as to whether we want to absorb those particular substances. And if we do, how far do they get in the body before our body senses they're there and maybe either takes them out or changes them? And in fact, this has led to the Americans that had a very big database of fruit and vegetables looking at the antioxidant potential of fruits and vegetables. This led to the Americans taking down that website because they felt that people were misinterpreting the information. Just because a piece of fruit has a particular antioxidant profile does not translate into that profile as benefiting ourselves. And in fact, when it comes to infection and inflammation, there's a real balance between us wanting to create a little bit of inflammation and drive our immune cells to that area of inflammation and try and get rid of what's causing the problem, versus going too far the other way, where you're actually trying to quieten the immune system, reducing the sort of potential for the immune system to get rid of toxins and so on, and therefore maybe immunocompromising yourself. So what's available in a fruit or vegetable or in a food that's on the label does not necessarily translate into having a beneficial effect in the body. And also say actually the combination of foods is important as well. And this is where, when we're looking at the whole diets, like the Eat Well Guide or the Australian Guide to Healthy Eating, we're looking at a sort of dietary matrix. We're saying eat this food along with some other food, and together they have a more beneficial effect than the sum of the parts.
No, absolutely. And so in terms of, it's like a drop in an ocean. If you just gave one thing, it's not going to have a big impact on the overall immune system. You have to look at the whole diet. You have to look at all of the nutrients that a varied, healthy, balanced diet, which you've explained, and which is the advice that we give at Heart UK as well, following the Mediterranean style diet. The principles of that, not only good for managing cholesterol, but also for supporting a healthy immune system. And in terms of vitamin and mineral supplements, because that's the other thing that often gets portrayed. We've had an inquiry come through about vitamin C, vitamin D, zinc. You know, they're all the ones which get portrayed in the media and get a lot of hype. What's the evidence? If you're healthy and well, because we'll focus on that first of all. If you're relatively healthy and well and you just want to support your immune system, what's the evidence for supplements?
Well, for vitamin and mineral supplements, there's probably not very much evidence actually for people eating a healthy diet. And if you look at the research, it seems to show that people that take a 1 a day multivitamin and mineral, what we call a broad spectrum supplement, that provides around about 50 to 100% of the RDA across a whole range of nutrients. Those people may seem to like live longer, be a little bit healthier. And it's a little bit difficult to decide, because when you look at the demographics of those people, they tend to eat healthier diets, do more exercise, don't smoke, have really positive sort of lifestyle activities. So it's hard to separate out in any nutrition research whether the nutrients had the effect or whether they were just a marker of a healthier lifestyle. But having said that, with older people and also with very young children, there may well be dietary limitations, and certainly the immune system is not as developed in very young children, and in the older individual, maybe over 65, 70, we get what's called immunosenescence, where the immune system is not quite as effective at protecting the body against infection. And for those people, again, if the diet is limited, a multivitamin mineral may be useful. For children, all children up to the age of 4 in the UK should be taking the Healthy Start vitamin drops, because they contain vitamin A and vitamin D and vitamin C. So you're getting 3 nutrients there that are very important for immune defense. And similarly, in older adults, perhaps if the diet isn't as good because problems with teeth, problems with mobility, cooking facilities being limited or not wanting to cook, then a supplement will not make a bad diet good, but it can help offset any potential deficiencies, just because people's appetites and food preferences change as they get into the 70s and 80s and onwards.
Interesting. And actually, we've had a question come through. It's sort of on this subject of things like supplements and foods, but this is on herbs. This is on ginger, that they've heard that ginger may negatively impact COVID-19. Is there any evidence for that? Ginger.
Well, ginger contains gingerols, which are important plant chemicals which have a sort of antiseptic or immune enhancing effect. But having to try and suggest whether taking ginger will actually protect you or taking turmeric is very difficult. The problem with COVID-19 is it is a novel virus. It's based on the cold and flu viruses that have existed previously, but it's a different shape. So although we have both our active immunity that's going to leap straight in there and start fighting, and then we have our adaptive immunity, which once we get immune to we've dealt with the coronavirus, we create a sort of template. So if we come across it again, we should be able to respond to it faster. The big problem we've got is with novel viruses, that the body's having to sort of scratch its head and think what to do about this. It's a bit like saying you're used to playing dominoes and then somebody gives you a Rubik's Cube. Now, there'll be people that can play the Rubik's Cube and convert it really quickly back into its sort of single coloured sides. I, for one, are useless. If that was my immune system, I wouldn't be here talking to you now, because I've never managed to do a Rubik's Cube. But given a little bit of time, people can work out how to do it. And that's just like our immune system. When there's a novel virus, it doesn't make much difference what you were exposed to before. Your body will mount the same reaction. It will do its best to try and work out what to do, how to get rid of the virus. In some people that's successful, and in others it's not as successful, and they may end up getting problems with their symptoms and the progress of the condition, and they may end up in hospital. So I think, from things like ginger or green tea or echinacea, these are all substances which have a potential role in the sort of routine and regular re-exposure to colds and flus, but not for something novel like coronavirus at the moment.
Okay, and a question that's come through as well is on vitamin D, and whether, because of the region that we live in the world, and whether we should be taking supplements of vitamin D. What's your thoughts about that? Well,
vitamin D is the only supplement that, when I worked at St George's, that my team routinely took every day. And in fact, last month, well, this month really, Public Health England recommended that people should be taking vitamin D if they're not going out in the sun. And the amount that's recommended is 10 micrograms a day, which is available in some of the multivitamin and mineral supplements, or as a single supplement by itself. Now, the issue with taking vitamin D is that it is a fat-soluble vitamin. So a lot of people take vitamin D with their breakfast meal, which might be a bowl of cereal and milk, or toast with jam or Marmite or whatever, and not very much fat. And so you might be taking vitamin D as a supplement, but you're not going to absorb it very well. So what we would recommend is that if you're taking a vitamin D supplement, or you're taking a multivitamin mineral supplement generally, take it with the main meal of your day, because the fat that tends to be in the main meal will help you absorb the vitamin D better into the bloodstream, where it can have an effect. And what's being shown is that just simply swapping from taking a vitamin D supplement with breakfast to taking it with the main meal of the day can double your blood level without changing the dose. Now that's quite important, because, you know, like everything at the moment, vitamin D is also in short supply. So we've got to look at how else we could get vitamin D. Foodstuffs are pretty low. So a salmon fillet, for example, will give you your day's requirements of vitamin D, but it's not a food that's either very accessible at the moment or probably within a lot of people's budget. So sunlight is a very good way of making vitamin D. And in fact, that's why vitamin D was wrongly classified. It was called a vitamin because usually vitamins are substances we can't make ourselves and we have to have in our diet. But actually we can make vitamin D by the action of sunlight on skin. And we can store vitamin D that's made in our liver and in our fat tissue, ready to use when there is no sun. So actually at this moment, from April to October, we can make vitamin D quite easily on the skin surface. So just by exposing your face, your hands, your arms to sunlight for about 5 to 30 minutes, depending on your skin tone, you can make plenty of vitamin D. That process is diminished a little bit as people get older, and for some people that are at higher risk of melanoma, we wouldn't be making that advice. But there are some useful little websites where you can calculate for your skin type how long you can safely go out in the sun for, and then to make vitamin D, and then how long you'd be in the sun for before you burn. And people like myself can probably make a day's vitamin D in about 5 minutes, and we burn within about 15 to 20 minutes, and that's not recommended. Burning is not recommended, and it also doesn't help with the vitamin D production.
And Catherine has kindly sent through a link that we can put on our website, which gives you an indication of how long you need to stay in the sun to make your vitamin D based on the location of where you are, which is fantastic. So the bottom line, if you're healthy, if you're relatively well, you're not fighting off the virus, is that you to eat a healthy, balanced diet. And no matter really what, there's no point in taking these so-called superfoods or extra supplements to try to give your immune system a boost in order to either prevent you from getting coronavirus, which no food or no diet will prevent you from getting that, or from maybe trying to give your immune system a boost in order to prevent you from getting the more serious complications. There isn't any evidence that anything above and beyond a healthy, balanced diet can do that. Is that, would you say that's the bottom line, Catherine?
That's right. I mean, the best we can do is to eat a variety of food. By eating a variety of food, you've got a full range of protein, of vitamins and minerals, of healthier fats that will help temper the immune system, and then of fibers, both the sort of roughage type fibers, but also the jelly sort of soluble fibers, which help maintain our gut microbiome. So variety is the key here, and I think it's really important for people to realize that actually what you're probably doing is okay. You know, we often say to people, well, look, if you're trying to have a healthy snack and you don't want to eat chocolate, but you want something that's going to make you feel better than an apple, eat a banana. But actually bananas have got vitamin B6 in, they've got soluble fiber in, so actually they've got two of the nutrients that we know are important for the immune system, as well as giving you a sort of sweet taste and being sort of a little bit akin to eating a bar of chocolate, not quite the same, but pretty acceptable compared to, say, eating a grapefruit. So, but that's a banana, and people think, oh, bananas, I eat bananas, but they can't be that good for you, can they? And we sort of forget that actually the foods we eat are the foods which over generations we've decided are useful to have in the diet, and that's why we've got to this stage where we're living longer than ever. We're healthier really than ever. We have age-related diseases because we're increasing our longevity. But eating a variety of foods, mainly plant-based, some protein, healthy fish oils and fibres is all we need. That's it.
Yeah. So, and on the converse, is there anything, we've had a question that come through, is there anything that can dampen your immune system, or any foods or that we should be avoiding or prevent, avoiding to have, because that can negatively impact our immune system?
Well, if we're talking about the immune system in terms of protecting our health, generally, not necessarily from viruses or bacteria, but perhaps from dodgy cells that are being produced every day. We're not perfect, neither is our liver or kidneys or lungs or breast. They do make cells which are slightly dodgy, and our immune system takes them out. One of the salutary tales really from the sort of early 80s were two very large studies done in people that were smokers that didn't have any evidence of cancer at the time that they registered for the trial, and half of each group were randomized to receive antioxidant vitamins in fairly high doses, beta carotene, vitamin C, vitamin E, and the other half were given nothing, just a dummy tablet. And in both trials, one in, I think, Finland, one in the States, they both finished early because one group developed more aggressive lung cancer than the other group that didn't have as much lung cancer, and when they did, it wasn't as aggressive. But surprisingly, it was those that took the antioxidant nutrients that actually had the higher risk of developing cancer, and then that cancer being more aggressive. So I think what we've got to bear in mind is that nutrients in small amounts are good for us. If we're deficient, that's definitely a problem. But in our Western diet, there are few nutrients that we are fully deficient in. And a varied diet, it's hard, you'd have to look at individual diets, but there is the possibility with taking too much that you actually override the normal defenses of the body in protecting ourselves. Vitamin C, for example, in very high doses causes diarrhea, and the maximum that we can fully utilize is probably about a 200 milligram dose at a time, which is about 2 to 3 times the recommended daily amount. But when you get people taking grams of vitamin C, the risk of diarrhea is much greater. Because we're not going to absorb it, the body doesn't want it. So I think we've got to bear in mind that too much of a good thing isn't a good thing.
Yeah, so just just because something is good for you, having more isn't necessarily going to make it better. And I think actually on that note, and with your experience in ICU, I think sometimes we're hearing some stories in the media of, for example, vitamin C being potentially beneficial with people who are on ICU. It then seems to translate that taking extra vitamin C is going to be helpful. Now, can we translate some of the studies and the findings that we're finding in ICU over into the general population?
No, and we can't. Working in ITU, it's very interesting because the body has to respond in a very different way when it's under threat. So what tends to happen at the moment with coronavirus is that people are not managing to defeat the virus themselves. It's causing problems with their lungs. They may need supportive oxygen and oxygen therapies on the ward. If that deteriorates further and they can't maintain a good level of oxygen in the bloodstream, they're admitted to intensive care. We will be involved with them, and then they may end up being intubated and ventilated. So that's like the artificial life support machines, people would think about it colloquially. And sometimes the degree of overwhelming infection or sepsis actually creates so many other problems that people might need support for their kidneys as well. So as well as having ventilatory support, they've got kidney support as well. And a number of processes in ICU, such as the kidney machines that we use, aren't as sophisticated as our bodies are in protecting nutrients. So we do use vitamin C and B group vitamins to help offset the losses from supportive measures. There has been some work looking at high dose vitamin C in ICU as to whether that improves outcome. And the results haven't been very useful, really, because very high levels given intravenously, which you can't achieve through taking supplements orally, very high levels of blood levels of vitamin C is actually pro-oxidant. It generates free radicals. In fact, some IV vitamin C has been used with some chemotherapy regimes to help support the chemotherapy drugs. So when we're looking at something like vitamin C, we're going to be saying, where's the benefit for this? And in fact, basing a lot of what we do on research that was done in the mid-90s across the world in ITUs, looking at immune-enhancing nutrition and the effect of outcome in very critically ill people with overwhelming infections. And this study actually looked at a feed that was supplemented with fish oils, with particular amino acids, arginine and glutamine, with extra antioxidant vitamins and minerals, everything that we thought would help support the immune system. And actually, the very rigorous studies were done on this for nutrition, which is quite unusual, but it was a very rigorous study, and several clinical research papers came out of it. And what they found is that the immune-enhancing nutrition had very little benefit. And in fact, for some people, those that had chest infections that were being ventilated, it actually was more harmful. It seemed to suppress the natural immune function. So in fact, ITU has really led the way perhaps 20 years ago in looking at immune enhancing nutrition. And now we curtail the use of that type of feed to very specific groups, usually patients that have had surgery, that have ended up very unwell after their surgery. And for them, there may be a benefit. But for the person with a chest infection that ends up in intensive care, an immune enhancing feed would be to their detriment. And that sounds completely counterintuitive, but I think what it shows is that the body responds in a way that it knows is the best for it to fight infection. And we're always trying to make people revert back to normal, but perhaps during a disease process, we've got to let the body run with what it's doing, because it knows better than us, and it's more sophisticated than us. And then we can support it while it tries to overcome what the problem is. So it's quite a solitary tale. We don't really want mega doses of vitamins and minerals. Certainly won't help you, and may actually be more harmful than do good.
Yeah, and I think also when we think about, for example, vitamin C, there's no point in taking mega doses to think that you're potentially protecting yourself from later on, because actually vitamin C is a water-soluble vitamin, so it's not going to be stored anyway. So I think it's, as you say, what goes on when you're in a disease state and you're in a serious, you're on ITU and your body's going under such drastic changes that you can't relate what's happening there to at a general sort of healthy well-being state. They're two very separate things, and we can't draw conclusions from what's going on in the ICU into the general healthy population. Well, I've looked at the time. We're already at the 6:30 half-past-6 time zone. So I think what we'll do is just to have that poll again. If we can just put the poll back up. Unfortunately, I can't see the results, which is not very useful. But it would be really good for our records to look at this, reflect back on, and hopefully see a sort of a change in the impact. So a couple of seconds to do this. I think just there was one question, Catherine, whilst the poll's taking place, was how do we know what condition our immune system is in? Is there any sort of indication to say whether it's in a good state or it's in not such a good state?
That's very difficult. I think if you manage to live a day-to-day life without getting overly breathless, without feeling that you're coming down with coughs and colds all the time, that you don't have a lot of aches and pains, or symptoms of other sort of conditions like autoimmune conditions like SLE or MS or rheumatoid arthritis, then probably I think you can sort of be quietly satisfied that your immune system is doing its job. There are different age groups that obviously are a little bit more prone to infection, as we've said, and some of those you can't change. It's age related. For example, with the flu vaccine and things, vaccines are really important means of helping protect the body, and in older people it's been shown that giving a probiotic drink with the flu vaccine actually helps stimulate that sort of longer term memory immunity, which actually then helps protect you ongoing from recurrent infections. But I think on the whole, as long as you're feeling okay, you don't feel that you're coming down with everything all the time, then that's fine. If you do feel that there are problems, though, you need to talk to your GP, because a lot of these symptoms might be manifested from something else. So I think if people are worried about their health, then by all means, do contact your GP. GPs are still open for business, and if it's not considered an urgent thing, you'll be seen at some stage. But don't leave it if you feel that you're not quite right and there's something that you need to discuss with the doctor. Go and discuss it.
Absolutely. I think that's a really important point to make, is that, you know, GPs are still open for business. And if there's any serious illnesses as well, then they need to be, or, you know, you're worried about something, then contact your GP, contact 111. But you would be pleased to know, Catherine, that 82% of respondents said that they were either very knowledgeable or knowledgeable on the subject of diet and immunity. So thank you ever so much for that. There were so many more questions that I wanted to ask you, which we haven't unfortunately got time for today. So just to say thank you ever so much for giving up your time today and your day off, being on Frontline. I can just imagine that your days off are extremely precious to you. So thank you ever so much. And I also want to just say that unfortunately we haven't been able to get through all of the questions that you posted today, but we will endeavour to email you the answers to your questions. I'd also want to say that we are open for business. We are providing support and information, and the only way we can do this is via people donating. So if you would like to continue to see these webinars and you would like to donate, then please do so via our website. So I think that's about it for tonight. Thank you ever so much. Thank you, Catherine, and have a good evening and stay safe. Thank you very much.